Thank you for joining the fifth and final session of the Fairness in Teaching FIT online training. This session will share hints, best practices, and inspiring tools for inclusive teaching. So, how can you improve your fairness in teaching? First, we suggest some tips based on an active and participatory teaching methodology. Carefully consider the classroom setting in order to facilitate and foster communication among pupils. Ensure your language is as inclusive as possible. This includes taking gender differences into consideration. Use immersive teaching methodologies, for example, cooperative learning, peer-to-peer, circle time, brainstorming, role plays, and simulations. Adopt a relational style that promotes trust and empathy. This will facilitate interactions and the freedom of expression among the pupils through non-judgmental communication, a willingness to listen, and a space to ask generative questions about ideas and reflections. Focus on how rather than why. Asking how questions moves away from the idea of finding the cause of an event or phenomena and forces us to examine the many aspects of a change. Instead of reconstructing the cause-effect relationship between variables, attention is focused on analysing the process and the solutions. When dealing with discriminatory behaviour adopted by children, we can take the example of a girl being kicked out of a group of boys who are playing football. Exploring the why would focus on the causes and who is at fault, while exploring the how points out the processes, dynamics, different contextual elements, communication and relational modes, and stereotypes. Analysing the different variabilities at stake would make pupils aware of the social reality and familiarise them with a critical view, for them to be able to understand different points of view and reflect on social processes. To take it a step further, we suggest exploring 3 teaching materials available on the FIT platform. Firstly, the Guidelines for Positive Actions for Girls in Mixed Education. This is a presentation of good practices in the EU to show why girls-only actions are needed to raise girls' awareness of STEM and provide recommendations on implementing them in a mixed school environment. This is supported by a collection of interventions from non-profit organisations active in the EU. It's also a reminder that in the not-so-distant past, science was taught differently to boys and girls, and this still has a strong impact on girls' reactions to STEM today. Secondly, a video about gender-sensitive content in STEM teaching. This showcases examples of how content can be created in a way that makes it more appealing to both boys and girls. And thirdly, an assessment grid for teachers to question your gender bias in your educational function. Transgender pupils are increasingly part of your classroom. The Trevor Project gives some guidelines on how to relate to them. Recognise, respect, and support students' gender identity and expression. Ask which nouns and pronouns the person prefers you to use. Enable all young people to express their gender identity through their choices of clothes, hairstyles, and accessories. Don't attempt to change a teenager's gender identity or punish them for their expression of gender. Treat a student's gender identity information as confidential to ensure respect and privacy. What are the possible measures you can carry out with your class? Firstly, don't hesitate to book a face-to-face session with your class to work on gender identity and expression. This will help in considering gender as a factor that recognises and values diversity and consolidates an inclusive educational system. For example, use the genderbread person presented in session 2 of this online training. Then, make your class aware of the transition process. after having received the consent of the student and his or her family. Make sure your activities are gender inclusive, for example using the teaching materials available on the FIT platform. Prevent hostile behaviour and discrimination based on gender identity, and set up protocols to address the bullying of transgender students in schools. Here are some tips for introducing a gender and intersectional lens into your STEM teaching. Firstly, invite female STEM role models that also have intersectional traits to come and speak to students about their academic and professional career in order to inspire them. They can have different socioeconomic or ethnic backgrounds and different abilities. You can also display videos of female STEM role models available on the FIT platform, for example. Secondly, when providing examples during teaching, adopt as intersectional a perspective as possible. This means trying to avoid examples that refer to male, white, perfectly able individuals, and instead introducing elements of diversity. In this way, the diversity of the pupils will be valorised. Finally, raise students' awareness of STEM jobs, for example, by illustrating them with reference to companies or organisations that are geographically close to the school. If you want to go a step further, we suggest looking at the teaching materials available on the FIT platform. For example, Hidden Figures is a movie telling the story of 3 incredible African American female mathematicians. You can also watch an 8-minute video which presents a list of movies and documentaries about women in STEM that you can use in your classroom. Use the video of women role models in STEM to introduce real-world STEM models and ask pupils to choose their own role models in STEM careers and explain why they've chosen them. Dr. Elizabeth John holds a PhD in biology, more specifically in genetics. Use her example to concretely illustrate the career of a woman in scientific research and attract more girls to this field. Another example of materials you can find on the platform is the Coding project tools. The Coding for Inclusion project, Coding Erasmus+, aims to foster STEAM education among disadvantaged youth, using an inclusive educational approach. This approach is based on a peer learning pedagogical method called Capital Digital in formal and non-formal educational contexts in Europe. The method consists of training 15 to 18-year-old students in secondary education from disadvantaged backgrounds to teach coding and programming to their younger peers in primary education. Students and pupils targeted in the Coding project are specifically from neighbourhoods where they are at risk of exclusion. We invite you to look at the other FIT teaching materials available on the FIT platform. The Convergent Deck Building game is an open source card game to introduce young people to the role of women in STEM. They will discover new role models and learn about scientific discoveries and those who made them. These practical guidelines aim to help teachers organise a successful summer camp to encourage female pupils in lower secondary education to choose a computer science curriculum. This tangible tool aims to support the learning of self-regulation in school activities. The game is based on the Guess Who board game. Students find a scientist by asking only yes or no questions related to his or her appearance or expertise. The game proposes a selection of 24 scientists, both real and fictional. The Gender Game is an interactive board game for children, young people and adults to raise awareness of gender differences in our society. We are now coming to the end of the FIT online training. What can you do next? The first thing you can do is connect to the FIT platform. As a reminder, it's a free website and no login is required. You can also complement the online training with two 2-hour face-to-face workshops. In the first, you will elevate your practices and share your experiences of the discriminatory situations you encounter in schools in order to find solutions for them. In the second workshop, you will discover and try out the teaching resources available on the FIT platform and can even create your own inclusive teaching project. Finally, we invite you to connect to the Padlet link provided to share your feedback about this online training. Thank you for participating in the FIT online training. Let's keep in touch.